Welcome to our channel, History of Dark Souls. This is a true story, friends. A female police officer walks into a prison cell and calmly tells the inmate, "You have exactly 2 months left to live. After that, your execution will be carried out. If you have any final wish, let us know. We'll try to fulfill it." But the prisoner doesn't cry. He doesn't beg. He just smiles and says, "My last wish. Until the day I die, I want to spend every night with a woman." The officer is stunned, shocked. She says, "That's not possible. We can't just bring a random woman in here to fulfill such a wish." But the prisoner looks her in the eye and says something bold. "Then why don't you do it?" The officer clenches her jaw. She's furious but composed. "I'm a police officer," she says. "Not here to entertain a convict's fantasies," but he doesn't back down. That wish never changes. So the question is, did the officer eventually grant that final wish? What happened next is a story that will leave you speechless. This is based on a true incident. Watch till the end, and if you enjoy this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story like this again. Let's begin. The cold grayness of the detention cell was broken only by the flickering light above Tyler's head. He sat motionless on the narrow cot, his back resting against the damp wall, staring into nothingness. The cell was quiet, save for the distant hum of ceiling fans and the occasional clang of a guard's baton. Despite being only 21, there was a strange maturity in Tyler's eyes, one born from pain, regret, and something else. Acceptance in the police precinct above. Detective Megan walked briskly down the corridor, holding a thin file in her hand, tall, confident, and clad in her standard-issue blues. Megan had joined the force less than a year ago, but already commanded the respect of her seniors. She was known for her fierce sense of justice, unwavering discipline, and unmatched bravery. The daughter of immigrants, she had grown up in a tough neighborhood and had worked her way through the system with grit and determination. In her mind, crime snorts was never to be tolerated, no matter who committed it. This case, however, felt different. She stopped in front of the holding cell and glanced at the name on the file. Tyler Brooks, accused of murdering his own mother. The charge had shocked the community, and the speed of the trial left little room for doubt. The court had sentenced him to death. Megan opened the cell door and stepped inside. Her boots made a soft thud against the concrete floor. Tyler slowly turned his head, meeting her gaze. His face was calm, almost a calm. "Tyler," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. "You've been given 2 more months before your sentence is carried out. As per state protocol, death row inmates are allowed to make one last request. If there's anything you want before the time comes, tell me now. We'll see if it's possible." There was a pause. Then, to her surprise, Tyler smiled. It wasn't mocking, nor was it filled with sorrow. It was serene. "My final wish," he asked softly, as Megan replied, already bracing herself for something painful or emotional. Tyler looked her dead in the eye and said, "I want to spend each night until my execution with a virgin woman." The words hung in the air like a slap. Megan blinked, stunned. "Did he just say that?" She straightened up. "That's completely inappropriate," she said sharply. "You do understand that we can't bring a girl to before she could finish." Tyler cut in with the same unnerving calm. "Then why don't you fulfill it?" Megan's jaw clenched. "Excuse me," she asked, a trace of disbelief in her voice. "You asked what I wanted," I answered. Tyler said, his voice level. "You're a woman, you're not married. I assume you're also the one in charge. If it's truly about fulfilling my last wish, then what's stopping you?" Megan's face flushed, though not with embarrassment, with anger. She opened her mouth to lash out, but stopped herself. This was a convict, a soon-to-be executed murderer. Losing composure in front of him wasn't an option. She drew in a slow breath. "I'm a police officer," she said coldly. "Not someone who entertains the fantasies of criminals." "I see," Tyler said with a small nod. "Then I'll wait. Maybe the system will have a change of heart." Megan glared at him. "Think of something else, something reasonable." But Tyler simply leaned back against the wall, the same faint smile on his lips. "I already have." Megan turned and walked out, her mind spinning. She dealt with thieves, traffickers, violent criminals. But something about this man, this request, unsettled her in a way she couldn't quite explain. As she closed the door behind her, she told herself she wouldn't entertain his nonsense again. Yet that night, as she reviewed his file again in the quiet of her office, She found herself staring at his photo for just a little longer than usual. The next few days passed slowly, each hour dragging heavier than the last. Megan tried to keep her mind occupied with routine tasks, paperwork, patrols, and other cases. But something kept pulling her back to that one strange conversation with Tyler. His calmness, his disturbing wish, and most of all, the way he had looked at her. Not with lust, not even with defiance, but with something deeper, a challenge almost philosophical. She had dealt with criminals who begged, cried, screamed, or threatened, but never one who smiled and made a wish that walked the line between absurd and impossible. Late one afternoon, a woman burst into the police precinct, crying. Megan was at her desk going through theft reports when she heard the commotion. The woman was in her 40s, clutching her torn handbag, eyes red from panic. "Officer, someone broke into my house. Everything is gone. My jewelry, my savings, even my late husband's watch." Megan stood up instantly and calmed the woman. "Don't worry, ma'am, we'll help. Just tell me your address and anything suspicious you noticed." After briefing to patrol officers and sending them to investigate, Megan decided to wait at the station. Only she and Tyler were now inside the precinct. The other staff had left for the field. The sky outside turned to amber. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the tiled floor. Megan, restless, walked down the hall toward Tyler's cell. Maybe it was boredom or curiosity or something. It's unexplainable that drew her back there. He was sitting in the same position as before, back against the wall, his legs folded. He looked up and smirked when she approached. "I was beginning to wonder if you'd come back," he said. "I didn't come for your amusement," Megan snapped. "I came to ask, do you feel nothing? You were sentenced to death for murdering your own mother, and yet here you sit, smiling as if it's all a game." Tyler's eyes darkened slightly, the smile fading just a little. "Did you ever think," he said slowly, "that maybe I didn't do what they said I did?" Megan frowned. "The evidence is clear. Your mother was found on the floor bleeding. You were standing there with a bloodied stick. You didn't even defend yourself during the trial." "I was in shock," Tyler replied, his voice softer now. "My mother, she was everything. I heard her scream and rushed to her. Someone had already hit her. I grabbed a stick from outside to defend her, but by the time I got inside, it was too late." Megan didn't respond immediately. Something in his voice felt real, too real, but she had learned long ago not to be swayed by emotion. "Then why didn't you speak up in court during questioning?" "I froze," he said. "I thought it was over. And maybe I didn't care if it was." Silence fell between them for a moment. Megan wasn't an officer and Tyler wasn't a convict. They were just two people in a room, both trapped in their own ways. Her phone buzzed, a message from the patrol unit. The robbery at the woman's home had been staged. Her own son had stolen the money from the dresser and spent it on gambling. The case was closed. No arrest necessary. Megan slid the phone back into her pocket and looked at Tyler. "The world's full of lies, isn't it?" she muttered. Tyler smiled faintly. "Now you're starting to understand." Later that evening, an official letter arrived at Megan's desk. It was from the state warden's office. It stated that if Tyler had a final wish, and if that wish could be fulfilled within the legal and moral framework, the department should do its best to accommodate it. She stared at the paper, her heartbeat quickening. The next morning, she brought a cup of coffee to Tyler's cell, something she'd never done for a prisoner before. He looked at the cup, then at her. "You're being kind," he said. "That's dangerous in a place like this." "Still have 2 months," she said, handing him the coffee. "This doesn't mean anything." He took the cup, sipped slowly, then looked her in the eyes. "The wish I told you about, it's still the same." Megan didn't speak. She stood there motionless. "You know," he added, "I've seen so many people come and go, guards, officers, priests. But when you came in that first day, something changed. You didn't look at me like I was a monster. You looked at me like I was a man." She looked down at her boots, heart thudding. "That doesn't mean I agree with you." "No," Tyler said, standing up slowly, "but you didn't walk away either." Megan turned and walked out quickly, her footsteps echoing louder than before. She couldn't understand what was happening. This wasn't right. She was a police officer. She wasn't supposed to feel anything for a death row convict. She wasn't supposed to return his gaze. But that night, alone in her apartment, she kept seeing his face. That strange calmness, that broken honesty, and somewhere deep inside, something she didn't want to name was beginning to stir. The rain tapped gently against the window panes of the precinct that night, soft and rhythmic, like a heartbeat in the dark. A storm was forming over the city, one that mirrored the one building inside Megan. For days, she had fought the turmoil within her. The growing empathy, the confusion, the emotional pull she never expected to feel for someone like Tyler, a convict, a man sentenced to die. But he wasn't like the others. There was something disturbingly honest about him, something vulnerable, raw, human. And that dangerous humanity was beginning to crack Megan's armor. The armor she'd spent years building as a woman in law enforcement. A woman in a world that demanded she be unshakable. That evening she stood in front of the mirror in the locker room out of uniform for the first time in days. Her long dark hair fell freely across her shoulders. She wore a simple dress, elegant, classic and modest, but it felt unfamiliar. The police badge wasn't clipped to her belt. The duty pistol was locked away. She wasn't Detective Megan tonight. She was just a woman. As the clock struck midnight, Megan quietly unlocked the hallway gate leading to the detention block. No one was there. The others were either asleep or out on night patrols. The station was deserted and the only sounds were of the storm rumbling in the distance and the soft click of her shoes on the tile. She reached Tyler's cell. He was awake. When he saw her dressed in the soft, dark fabric, his eyes widened in disbelief. Not because of lust or desire, but something closer to awe. "You came," he whispered. Megan didn't respond. She simply unlocked the door and stepped inside. For a moment they stood in silence, just looking at each other. There were no handcuffs, no rules, no uniforms, just two people standing in a moment that shouldn't have existed. "You asked for your final wish," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm here to give you that, but not as your warden. Only as Megan." Tyler nodded, emotion flickering in his eyes. "I never expected you to actually come." "I didn't either," she admitted that night. Within the stone walls of a prison meant for the condemned, something happened that defied protocol logic and everything Megan believed about justice and duty. They held each other in silence, speaking through touch, through warmth, through the quiet desperation of two souls who had found something real in a place meant for endings. Afterward, they sat on the floor together, their backs against the wall, staring at the tiny barred window where moonlight was trying to cut through the clouds. "I've never seen anyone do something like this," Tyler said quietly. "I meant what I said before. You don't look at me like I'm a monster." Megan looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Because I don't think you are," he turned to her. "Then why did no one else believe me? Maybe because no one else took the time to listen." And so she did. For the next 2 hours, Megan listened as Tyler poured his truth into the silence. The story of that night, how he had returned home to find his mother screaming, a man fleeing out the back door and blood pooling around her frail body. How he had chased after the man but returned too late. How he picked up the stick lying nearby, confused, panicked, and when the neighbors saw him, they saw only a boy with a weapon and a bleeding woman on the floor. He had tried to explain during the first interrogation, but the panic silenced him. The system moved too fast. No lawyer truly cared. His fate had been decided before his voice could reach the surface. Megan's throat tightened. For the first time in her career, she felt shame. Not because she had crossed a line, but because the line was drawn in the wrong place. The next morning, Megan went to her superior officer and demanded a reinvestigation. She filed a motion, argued in front of a judge, submitted her own report. Her colleagues whispered. Her seniors raised eyebrows, but she didn't stop. She had stared into the eyes of a man she knew was telling the truth. Weeks passed. An inquiry reopened. Witnesses were requested. Forensic reports were reanalyzed, and then a breakthrough. Fingerprints from the stick didn't match Tyler's. It matched a known criminal who had disappeared the night of the murder. The case unraveled. The real killer was found, arrested, and confessed. Tyler was declared innocent. The court vacated his sentence. He was free as the sun set on the day he walked out of the courthouse. A free man for the first time in a year, Megan waited outside in her plain clothes. No badge, no uniform, just a smile. He walked toward her slowly, still unsure if it was all real. "I don't even know what to say," he murmured. "Then don't," she said, stepping forward and taking his hand. "Just live." 3 months later, in a quiet ceremony attended only by close friends and colleagues, Megan and Tyler were married. She was 3 years older than him, but they didn't care. He was once condemned to die. She was once afraid to feel, and now they were both free from the past, from fear, from fate. Married life had brought a strange kind of peace for both Megan and Tyler. Not the kind filled with grand romance or picture-perfect moments, but something deeper, a quiet companionship, an understanding that neither of them had known before. They had each survived something tragic and brutal. And now, in their modest two-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city, they were finally learning how to breathe again. Tyler had started working part-time at a legal aid center where he helped other former convicts navigate life after prison. Megan, though still on the force, had requested a shift to internal affairs, away from arrests and street crime, away from the places that still echoed with her memories of Tyler behind bars. On weekends, they cooked together. They argued over little things like which side the couch should face or whether to plant tulips or roses on the balcony. Sometimes they laughed so hard it made Megan's eyes tear up. Other times in the middle of the night, she would find Tyler sitting silently in the living room, staring at the moonlight pouring in through the window, the trauma of prison not fully faded. Still, they were healing slowly but surely. And then came the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday. No name, no return address, just a plain envelope slipped under their door. Megan picked it up absent-mindedly as she returned from her morning jog. She opened it, expecting a bill or some promotional flyer, but what she read instead made her freeze in place. "You freed a murderer. I wasn't finished with him yet." The paper slipped from her hand and fluttered to the floor. She picked it up again, scanned every inch. No fingerprints, no handwriting, just those typed words, centered and bold. Megan's mind went into immediate tactical mode. Had someone followed her, followed Tyler? Was this a prank, a threat, or something worse? Could it be the man who truly killed Tyler's mother, someone they thought had already been caught? She debated whether to tell Tyler when he walked in. Later that day, smiling with a bag of groceries in hand, she forced a smile back, but it didn't reach her eyes. That night, as they ate dinner, Tyler noticed her silence. "What's going on?" he asked gently. She hesitated for a moment, then slid the envelope across the table. He read it once, then again. His hand trembled slightly. "You think it's him?" "I don't know," she said, "but I'm not taking any chances." Over the next week, Megan quietly reopened files. She contacted the district forensic team. She requested sealed reports from the prison system. She even visited the man who had been arrested for Tyler's mother's murder, a wiry, hollowy drifter named Caleb Ellis. He had confessed, yes, but something about the way he spoke now. It was as if he no longer remembered. "People tell me I did it," he mumbled, his eyes distant. "Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Things get blurry when you're high for that long." A cold feeling settled in Megan's chest. What if the wrong man had been convicted again? What if Tyler's release hadn't been the end of the story, but only the beginning of something far more twisted? That night, as the storm rolled in and the lights flickered in their apartment, Megan sat awake, staring at the letter again. The words seemed to whisper off the page. "I wasn't finished with him yet." She got up quietly and locked every window, every door. She checked Tyler's breathing as he slept, calm, peaceful. But deep inside, Megan knew something was coming. And this time she would have to protect not just truth, but love itself. If you guys want part 2 of this story, let me know in the comments. A strange bond between a cop and a death row inmate. A story of truth, emotions, and unexpected choices. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us for more. Stay well, stay safe.